Have you ever felt like you're carrying the weight of someone else's emotions on your shoulders? Like every time they get angry, sad, or disappointed, it must be your fault? I used to feel that way too. But then I learned something that completely changed how I live and how I lead my life. And it's this: you're not responsible for their emotions. That phrase might sound simple, but it's one of the most freeing truths you'll ever understand. Because when you really get this, you stop trying to control things that were never in your control to begin with. You stop apologizing for being yourself. And most importantly, you start living lighter, calmer, and more confident, because you finally know where your responsibility ends and where theirs begins. You're not responsible for their emotions. Let that sink in. Because for a long time, I didn't believe this. I thought that if someone around me was upset, disappointed, or angry, then somehow it must be because of me. I thought it was my job to fix them, to calm them down, to adjust myself so that their mood would change. And maybe you've done the same. You walk on eggshells. You try to guess what people want. You carry guilt that doesn't even belong to you. But here's the truth. When you take responsibility for other people's emotions, you're trying to play a role you were never designed to play. Think about it. Emotions come from the inside. They are produced by thoughts, beliefs, and expectations. That means if someone gets upset because of what you did or said, it's not your action alone that created their reaction. It's the meaning they attach to it. You and I can look at the exact same situation and feel completely different emotions. Why? Because we interpret it differently. That means their emotions belong to them, not to you. Now here's where it gets tricky. Some people don't want to own their emotions. Instead, they'll project them onto you. They'll say things like, "You made me angry, you hurt me, you ruined my day." And if you're not careful, you'll believe them. You'll accept responsibility for something that was never in your control. That's how you get trapped, living your life like a puppet, controlled by the strings of other people's moods. So what do you do instead? You learn to draw the line. You learn to separate what belongs to you from what belongs to them. You can acknowledge their feelings without absorbing them. You can say, "I see that you're upset," or "I hear what you're feeling," without taking it as your burden. That's not cold. That's healthy. Because if you carry what isn't yours, you'll eventually burn out. Let me make this practical. Imagine you're in business and a customer lashes out at you. Maybe they're frustrated with a delay, or they expected something different. You could take it personally, feel crushed, and spiral into guilt. Or you could step back and remember, their frustration is real, but it's also filtered through their expectations. You can take responsibility for your actions, maybe the delay, maybe a mistake, but you don't have to carry the weight of their entire emotional storm. That's theirs to manage. Or take family. Let's say a parent or partner is constantly disappointed in you. They sigh, they criticize, they tell you how you're not enough. If you think you're responsible for their emotions, you'll live your whole life trying to meet an invisible standard that keeps moving. But if you realize you're not responsible for their emotions, you can stop chasing approval and start living in truth. You can say, "I love you, I respect you, but your happiness isn't my assignment." And leadership, it's the same. If you lead a team, you know emotions run high. Deadlines get stressful, conflicts happen, mistakes are made. If you try to manage everyone's emotions, you'll exhaust yourself. A real leader doesn't absorb every frustration. A real leader acknowledges emotions, creates space for them, but also teaches responsibility. Because when people own their emotions, they also own their growth. Here's something I learned the hard way. When you stop taking responsibility for other people's emotions, you actually empower them. You give them the dignity of owning their own reactions, their own choices, their own healing. If you keep rescuing them emotionally, you rob them of the chance to grow stronger. It's like trying to carry someone else's backpack up the mountain while also carrying your own. Eventually, you collapse under the weight. But if you say, "This is your backpack, you carry it," you both get stronger, and you get to the top without resentment. Now, I'm not saying be careless or unkind. You're still responsible for your actions, your words, your impact. If you hurt someone, apologize. If you break trust, rebuild it. But don't confuse that with taking ownership of feelings you didn't create. The line is simple. You're responsible for what you do. They're responsible for how they feel about it. When I applied this in my own life, everything changed. I used to think business success depended on making everyone happy. Impossible. Someone's always upset. But when I stopped carrying their emotions as my own, I was free to focus on solutions instead of guilt. In relationships, I stopped apologizing for existing. I stopped bending myself into shapes that pleased everyone else but broke me. And in leadership, I became more confident because I wasn't controlled by moods. I was guided by principles. And here's the paradox. When you stop being responsible for other people's emotions, you actually become more peaceful and more compassionate. Because you're no longer defensive or drained, you can actually listen better. You can care without carrying. You can empathize without being enslaved. So the next time someone says, "You made me angry," pause, take a breath. Remind yourself their anger belongs to them. Your job is to own your actions, not their interpretations. That's the key to staying free, to staying strong, and to staying true. Here's something I realized after practicing this. Knowing that you're not responsible for their emotions is one thing, but living it out in the middle of a heated conversation is another. When you're face to face with someone raising their voice, blaming you, or projecting their frustration, it's so easy to fall back into old patterns, defending yourself, apologizing for things that weren't even your fault, or shutting down completely. That's why I had to build practical steps, like small anchors I could hold on to in real time. The first step is breathing. I know it sounds too simple, but it's powerful. When emotions rise in the room, your body feels it first. Your heart rate spikes, your muscles tense, your mind races. That's your nervous system getting hijacked. If you let that take over, you'll react instead of respond. But if you take a slow, intentional breath, inhale, pause, exhale, you give your brain just enough space to stay in control. It's like hitting the brakes before your car crashes into a wall. That one breath is often the difference between saying something you regret and saying something that brings peace. The second step is words. Instead of absorbing their emotions, you redirect them with language that acknowledges without owning. For example, if someone says, "You don't care about me," the old you might rush to defend. "Of course I care. How can you say that?" But try this instead. "I hear that you're upset and that you feel uncared for." Notice the difference? You didn't accept their accusation, but you also didn't fight it. You handed the emotion back where it belongs, on their side of the fence. That's boundary language. Another phrase I use a lot is, "That's how you see it, and I respect that." This is especially useful in business or leadership. People want you to take their perspective as the only truth. But reality is, two people can look at the same event and see totally different stories. By saying, "That's how you see it," you give them validation without surrendering your own clarity. It's a way of standing your ground without escalating the conflict. Then there's body language. If your posture collapses, your shoulders slump, or your eyes dart nervously, you unconsciously tell the other person you've accepted their emotional projection. But if you sit upright, shoulders back, calm expression, steady tone, you send the message. "I'm here, I'm grounded, and I'm not getting pulled into your storm." People pick up on that more than on your words. Now let me tie this into family. Families are emotional ecosystems. If one person is upset, it spreads. If you're the one who usually fixes everyone, you've probably trained your whole family to dump their emotions on you. But you can retrain them by showing calm consistency. When they come at you with guilt or frustration, you can say calmly, "I understand that's how you feel, but I'm not responsible for fixing your feelings." At first, they may resist. They'll test you, because the old pattern served them. But over time, they'll respect your strength, and the dynamic will shift. And business, this one's huge. In business, emotions run wild. Customers, partners, even employees bring in their frustrations, and if you're not careful, you'll end every day drained. I remember a client once blaming me for delays that were actually on their side. Old me would have apologized endlessly, trying to keep them happy. But now I said, "I understand this is frustrating for you, but let's look at the facts together." I stayed calm, I didn't take on their storm, and instead of guilt, I brought solutions. That's when I realized, clients respect you more when you hold boundaries. They may not like it at first, but they trust you more. Leadership is another place this principle changes everything. A weak leader tries to carry everyone's emotions. A strong leader teaches ownership. When a team member is upset, you listen, you empathize, but you also say, "What do you think we can do about it?" That question hands them back their power. It tells them, your emotions are valid, but they're yours to navigate. And that's the foundation of real growth. Here's another layer. If you're always responsible for other people's emotions, you'll never take bold risks. Because you'll always be worried. What will they think? How will they feel? That fear keeps you small. But once you free yourself, you can step into bigger opportunities. You can launch the business, share the idea, make the tough decision, because you're no longer chained to managing reactions. Think about the freedom in this. You can walk into a room, speak your truth, and know that how people respond is their journey, not your burden. Some will love you, some won't. That's life. But if you live trying to balance everyone's emotions, you'll never discover your own. And let me say this, letting go of responsibility doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care in the right way. You care by listening, by showing up, by being present. But you don't care by carrying. Because carrying breaks you, and once you're broken, you can't help anyone. I think of it like sailing. Your boat is your responsibility, your sails, your steering, your direction. Other people's boats are theirs. If they're caught in a storm, you can sail alongside them, you can encourage them, you can share wisdom, but you can't take the wheel for them. If you try, you'll crash both boats. So the next time you're in a tough conversation, remember these anchors. Breathe, use boundary words, keep strong posture, hand back ownership with questions, and keep your focus on what you can control. When you live this way, you'll not only protect your peace, you'll also inspire others to rise into their own responsibility. Before we wrap this up, let me tell you a story. It's not a story about me, but it's a story that might feel like you or someone you know. There was once a man who lived his whole life trying to keep everyone around him happy. From the moment he was a child, he learned that when people around him were upset, it was his job to fix it. When his parents argued, he would step in, make jokes, distract, anything to lighten the mood. When his friends were mad at each other, he became the peacekeeper. When he grew older and started working, he carried that same pattern into his career, always smoothing things over, taking the blame when projects failed, apologizing for things that weren't his fault, over-delivering just so no one would be disappointed in him. From the outside, he looked dependable. People said, he's such a good guy, always there for everyone. But inside, he was exhausted. He wasn't just carrying his own life, he was carrying everyone else's storms. And it came at a cost. His own needs got buried. His dreams were delayed. His health was deteriorating because stress had become his constant companion. He lived like a sponge, soaking up every emotion in the room until there was nothing left of him. One day, something broke. His closest friend lashed out at him, saying, "You never do enough for me." And that was the moment he realized no matter how much he gave, it would never be enough. Because he wasn't responsible for filling someone else's emptiness. He was only responsible for his own. That was the turning point. He started to see life differently. When people were upset, instead of rushing in to rescue, he paused. He listened, he acknowledged, but he didn't carry it. He told himself, their emotions are theirs, my emotions are mine. He began setting boundaries, even though it was uncomfortable at first. He lost some relationships because those relationships were built on him carrying the load, but he also gained freedom. He gained peace. And over time, he built stronger, healthier connections where responsibility was shared, not dumped on him. Now let me ask you, can you see yourself in that story? Have you lived like that man, carrying everyone's storms, thinking it's love when really it's self-destruction? Because here's the truth. Love doesn't mean carrying what's not yours. Love means standing strong, so others can learn to stand too. And this is where the lesson connects back to us. You're not responsible for their emotions. Let me say that again. You are not responsible for their emotions. You can care deeply about someone, you can support them, you can encourage them, but you cannot and should not try to own their emotional world. That's theirs to manage, to heal, to navigate. Think of it like this. If you're always responsible for how someone else feels, you're giving them the steering wheel of your life. They turn left, you follow. They brake suddenly, you slam into a wall. They speed up, you lose control. But when you reclaim that wheel, you start steering your own path. You stop living as a reaction to someone else's storm and start living in alignment with your own clarity. Now let's tie this into business. Imagine running a company where every decision is made based on not upsetting people. You'd never raise your prices, you'd never say no to a client, you'd never enforce boundaries with your team. That's not leadership. That's survival mode. Businesses collapse under that weight. The strongest companies and the strongest leaders are the ones who understand. I can serve people without owning their emotions. The same principle applies in family and relationships. If you let guilt and obligation run your choices, you'll never live authentically. Here's what I've learned. When you stop carrying other people's emotions, you actually become a better friend, partner, leader. Because instead of being drained and resentful, you show up clear, calm, and consistent. You stop reacting, and you start guiding. People trust those who can stay steady when the storm rages. And here's the final thought. You owe it to yourself to live free. Not free from caring, but free from carrying. That freedom doesn't just make your life lighter, it makes your impact stronger. Because when you live with that kind of clarity, people around you feel it. They realize they can own their emotions too. It's like giving them permission to rise higher, because they see you doing it. So let me leave you with this. The next time someone tries to hand you their anger, their disappointment, their insecurity, pause. Take a breath. Remember the story of that man who carried storms that weren't his to carry. And tell yourself, this doesn't belong to me. I can care without carrying. Because once you live that truth, you're not responsible for their emotions. You step into a new level of peace, power, and freedom.